The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 6. Ivan Ilyich saw that he was dying, and he lived in constant despair. Deep down he knew he was dying, but not only had he not gotten used to the idea, he simply did not understand it. He could not grasp it at all. The syllogism he had learned from Kiesewetters' logic textbook went like this: Caius is a man, men are mortal, therefore Caius is mortal. All his life it had seemed to him correct as far as Caius was concerned, but never as far as he himself was. Caius was a man in general, and for man in general it was perfectly fair. But he was not Caius, and he was not man in general. He had always been a being entirely different from all others. He had been Vanya, with Mama and Papa, with Mitya and Volodya, with the toys, the coachman, the nanny, and later with Katenka, with all the joys, griefs, and raptures of childhood, boyhood, and youth. Did Caius know the smell of that striped leather ball Vanya had loved so much? Had Caius kissed his mother's hand like that, and had the silk folds of his mother's dress rustled like that for Caius? Had Caius rioted over the pastries at law school? Had Caius been in love like that? Could Caius run a session of court the way he could? Yes, Caius really is mortal, and it's right for Caius to die. But for me, for Vanya, for Ivan Ilyich, with all my feelings and thoughts, it's a different matter entirely. It cannot be that I meant to die. That would be too terrible. That was how it felt to him. If I were meant to die like Caius, I would have known it. Some inner voice would have told me, but there was never anything like that in me. And I and all my friends, we understood that our case was nothing like the case of Caius. And now this, he said to himself. It can't be. It can't be, and yet it is. How? How am I supposed to understand it? And he could not understand it, and he tried to drive the thought away as false, wrong, unhealthy, and to crowd it out with other thoughts, sound and healthy ones. But the thought, and not just the thought, but what felt like reality itself, kept coming back and planting itself in front of him. And he called up other thoughts, one after another, to take its place, hoping to find some support in them. He tried to go back to the old lines of thought that had once screened the thought of death from him. But strangely, everything that had once screened it, hidden it, wiped it out, no longer worked. Lately, Ivan Ilyich spent most of his time on these attempts to restore the old habits of feeling that had shielded him from death. He would tell himself, I'll bury myself in my work. After all, it was my whole life. And he would go to court pushing away every doubt. He would fall into conversation with his colleagues and take his seat, absent-minded in the old way, sweeping the crowd with a thoughtful gaze, resting both wasted hands on the arms of the oak chair, leaning toward a colleague as usual, moving a case along, trading whispers, then suddenly raising his eyes and sitting up straight, he would pronounce the familiar words and open the proceedings. But suddenly, midway through, the pain in his side, paying no attention to what stage the case had reached, would begin its own gnawing work. Ivan Ilyich would listen to it, try to push the thought of it away, but the pain kept on, and it came and stood right in front of him and looked at him, and he froze. The fire went out of his eyes, and he began asking himself again, can it be that it alone is true? And his colleagues and subordinates saw with surprise and dismay that he, such a brilliant, subtle judge, was getting confused and making mistakes. He would shake himself, try to pull himself together, somehow bring the session to a close, and come home with the sad knowledge that his work on the bench could no longer hide from him what he wanted hidden, that his work on the bench could not save him from it. And worst of all was this: it pulled him toward itself, not so that he would do something, but only so that he would look at it, straight in the eye, look at it, and without doing anything, suffer beyond words. And to escape this state, Ivan Ilyich looked for comfort, for other screens, and other screens appeared, and for a short while they seemed to save him. But almost at once they did not so much fall apart as turn transparent, as if it passed through everything, and nothing could shut it out. In those last weeks he would go into the drawing room he had furnished himself, the very room where he had fallen, the room he had sacrificed his life for, a thought he found poisonously funny, because he knew his illness had begun with that bruise. He would go in and see that something had cut a scratch into the lacquered table. He would look for the cause and find it, the bronze trim of an album, bent up at the edge. He would pick up the album, an expensive one he had put together with love, and feel annoyed at the sloppiness of his daughter and her friends. Here a page torn, there photographs turned upside down. He would carefully set it all in order and bend the trim back into place. Then the thought would come to him to move the whole arrangement, albums and all, to another corner, over by the flowers. He would call the footman. His daughter or his wife would come to help. They disagreed. They contradicted him. He argued and got angry. But all of that was good, because he wasn't remembering it. It was nowhere in sight. But then, as he was moving something himself, his wife would say, "Please, let the servants do it. You'll hurt yourself again." And suddenly it flashed through the screens. He saw it. It only flashed, and he still hoped it would disappear, but in spite of himself he turned his attention to his side. The same thing was sitting there, aching the same way as ever. And now he could no longer forget, and it was looking at him plainly from behind the flowers. What was the point of anything? And it's true. Right here at this curtain, I lost my life, like a soldier storming a fortress. Can that be? How horrible and how stupid. It can't be. It can't be, and yet it is. He would go to his study and lie down, and there he was alone with it again, face to face with it, and nothing to be done about it.